The same lion returned every night, as if keeping count. When their little boy vanished into the woods, the Doyle family lost all sense of time until a lion began appearing at their back door every single night. 3 knocks, the same hour, the same unblinking stare, and when it finally dropped a clue from their missing child at their feet, the truth behind those visits turned them pale. The late afternoon sun still hung warm over Horseshoe Ridge when Megan Doyle last saw her son running across the yard with a bright green ball under his arm. It had been one of those gentle days she wished she could bottle forever. Quiet, still, the kind where the wind barely stirred the pines and even the creek behind their home whispered instead of rushed. Leo had begged for 5 more minutes outside, and Megan, folding laundry by the kitchen window, had smiled and nodded. It felt safe here. It had always felt safe.
Hey, Mom.
She heard his laughter skimming across the yard like a skipping stone. It was the kind of sound that softened her whole chest. When she looked up, she saw his small shape dart past the garden fence, the back of his red flannel shirt bright against the fading day. He headed toward the creek bank the way he always did, just to toss rocks or chase grasshoppers. The sun dipped, painting long shadows across the yard. Megan turned for just a moment to switch over a load of laundry. No more than a minute. 2 at most. When she stepped back to the window, the yard was empty. At first she wasn't worried. Leo loved hiding behind the shed to jump out and scare her. She opened the back door, laughing lightly, calling his name. "Leo? Come on, sweetheart. Time to come inside." Her voice carried over the quiet property, echoing against the line of tall pines. There was no answer. She stepped out farther, her smile fading. "Leo?" Still nothing. By the time she reached the creek, the last bit of warmth in the sky had melted into blue. The water trickled softly over the stones. Leo's ball sat abandoned near a cluster of reeds. Her heart lurched. She picked it up with trembling fingers and called again, louder this time. The only reply was the rustle of branches high up the ridge. A cold prickle crept along her shoulders. Within minutes, she was running back toward the house, shouting for her husband. Ryan burst from the garage, the worry already etched on his face before she could speak. She pointed toward the woods, breathless, her words tangled with fear. He grabbed a flashlight and headed into the trees without hesitation, calling their son's name over and over into the darkening forest. Megan dialed 911 with shaking hands. By the time the first search party arrived, the sky was black. Flashlights bobbed across the yard. Voices carried through the woods. Dogs barked as they picked up traces of scent. Neighbors joined in, spreading across the ridge with lanterns and headlamps. The once peaceful tree line looked different now, taller, darker, as if it had swallowed the daylight whole. Each hour that passed drained Megan's hope drop by drop. The search captain walked her through questions she barely heard. What was Leo wearing? Had he been upset earlier? Did he often wander? Each answer felt like a crack in her chest. Ryan returned from the ridge more than once, covered in dirt and pine needles, sweat streaking his face despite the cold, but always shaking his head. No tracks they could follow clearly. No sign of struggle. No direction to chase. It was as if their son had stepped into the trees and vanished into the air. By midnight, temperatures plummeted. Megan wrapped her arms around herself as the wind bit through her sweater. She kept seeing flashes of Leo's smile in her mind, the way he scrunched his nose when he laughed, the tiny freckle below his left eye. She couldn't let herself imagine him out there alone in the cold. She wouldn't. But the longer the search dragged on, the more terror crept into the spaces hope once lived. Ryan tried to pull her inside to rest, but every step away from the forest felt like betrayal. She stood on the porch, staring into the dark, praying for any sound that resembled her child's voice. All she heard were murmurs of search teams, fading bit by bit as they spread out farther across Horseshoe Ridge. Just past 2 a.m., The sheriff gently suggested they pause until dawn. Megan shook her head violently, tears streaming. Dawn felt too far away, too cruel. But the teams had been out for hours. They needed rest. She and Ryan stood in silence as the last flashlight beam disappeared between the trees. The night pressed in around them, heavy and cold. The once safe forest felt like an enemy now, standing in front of them, tall and unmoving, holding its secrets tight. Megan leaned into Ryan, her voice barely a whisper. "Where is he? Where is our little boy?" He held her, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the dark woods. He didn't answer because he couldn't, because neither of them understood how a child could vanish so completely in a place they thought they knew. And just like that, in a single twilight hour, the life they'd always trusted cracked apart, leaving only an empty yard, an abandoned ball by the creek, and a silence that felt impossibly loud. The peaceful rhythm of Horseshoe Ridge had been shattered, and neither of them could shake the terrifying truth slowly settling over their hearts. Leo was gone. For 3 days, Megan and Ryan lived in a haze of fear, dread, and hollow exhaustion. The search teams combed the ridge from dawn until long after sunset. Volunteers, rangers, K-9 units, everyone who could help had shown up. But as each night arrived without a sign of their son, hope thinned like smoke in cold air. Megan barely slept at all. She kept drifting between the back porch and the kitchen window, staring toward the creek as if willing Leo to appear through sheer force of love. Ryan stayed out in the woods until his legs buckled from fatigue, returning home looking older each time, his clothes soaked with dew and mud, his eyes rimmed red from lack of rest. By the 3rd night, the sheriff began slowing the search. He tried to sound gentle, but nothing could soften the meaning behind his words. Cold nights are hard on little ones. Megan pressed her hand to her mouth, choking on a sob she refused to let escape. She stood in the living room afterward, clutching Leo's favorite blanket against her chest, rocking slightly as though she were holding him. Ryan sat at the kitchen table with a search map spread out in front of him. But the lines might as well have been meaningless scratches. Every direction had already been combed. Every ridge, every stream, every clearing echoed the same unbearable silence. Near midnight, Megan made herself a cup of coffee, though she knew she wouldn't drink it. The house felt like it was holding its breath. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of cooling wood beams, the faint buzz of the porch light. Everything felt painfully loud in the absence of Leo's laughter. She stood at the sink, fingers trembling around the warm mug, when a faint sound reached her ears, a soft tap, barely audible, somewhere behind her. She stiffened. Tap. She set the coffee down and listened harder. The wind sometimes knocked branches against the siding, but this sound was too sharp, too neat. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. Distinct, evenly spaced. Not random, not wind. Her breath hitched. She turned her head slowly toward the sliding glass door at the back of the living room. Ryan lifted his head from the table at the same moment, as though he'd heard it too. His chair scraped back. Both of them moved toward the sound without speaking, guided by instinct. Fear, hope, confusion all tangled into one tremor in their chests. The knock came again, 3 times, measured, steady. Ryan reached the living room first. His hand hovered near the curtain. Megan moved beside him, her fingers clutching the edge of his shirt. He glanced back at her, the question unspoken but heavy in his eyes. "Are you ready?" She wasn't. Neither of them could ever be ready. But she nodded. He pulled the curtain aside. The room filled with light as the lamp reflected off the glass. What stood on the porch made Megan gasp so sharply she lost her breath. Not a neighbor, not a rescue worker, not even an animal she recognized. A lion, a young lion, broad-shouldered, golden-furred, its mane only beginning to grow around its neck, stood pressed nearly nose to glass. Its breath fogged the sliding door in short, steady bursts. Long whiskers twitched with each exhale, its amber eyes locked onto theirs with an intensity that rooted both of them in place. Megan's knees weakened. She grabbed Ryan's arm to steady herself. Her mind scrambled to make sense of what she was seeing. Mountain lions existed here, yes, but this was no mountain lion. This creature was larger, heavier, with features unlike anything native to Arizona's high country. Its presence felt impossible, wrong, surreal. But what chilled Megan most wasn't the creature's size or its proximity. It was the expression in its eyes. Not hunger, not fear, not wildness. Something else. Something she couldn't name. It didn't growl. It didn't pace. It didn't snarl or show its teeth. Instead, it lifted one enormous paw and tapped the glass again. Tap, 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 the exact same pattern. Megan stumbled backward, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Ryan," she whispered, "what is happening?" He didn't answer. His body tensed in front of her, arms slightly out as though he could shield her from a creature 3 times his size. The lion stood motionless now, except for the slow rise and fall of its chest. Then, with calm deliberation, it tilted its head slightly, as if examining them. A shadow danced across the yard, headlights sweeping through the darkness. A car slowed near their driveway before stopping. Their elderly neighbor, Lorna Jenkins, rolled her window down and called softly, "Megan? Ryan? Is everything all right?" But her voice broke halfway when she caught sight of the animal on their porch. "Good Lord." The lion didn't react to her, not even a turn of its head. It stayed fixed on the Doyles. Ryan motioned frantically for Lorna to stay back. She nodded and ducked lower in her seat. The lion lowered its head a fraction, not in aggression, but almost respectfully. Then it stepped backward off the porch, its paws silent against the wooden boards. It looked over its shoulder toward the dark tree line, gave a brief flick of its tail, and then turned back to stare at them again. Megan felt something deep in her chest shift, like a tug of invisible thread pulling her forward. She didn't understand it, but she felt it all the way to her bones. Ryan whispered, "It's trying to lead us somewhere." She stared at him. "Ryan, that can't be, that's—" Tap, tap, tap. The lion pressed one paw to the glass again, softer this time, almost urging. Outside, the trees swayed gently. The cold brush of night seeped through the walls of the house. Megan began to tremble, not from fear, but from something much worse. A possibility too wild to say aloud. What if this creature knew something? What if it had seen something? What if— "No," Ryan whispered, shaking his head as if hearing her thoughts. "This isn't real. Animals don't do this. Not here. Not anywhere." The lion exhaled, fogging the glass again. Its eyes softened, if such a thing were possible for a creature like this. And then it turned, took several slow steps toward the tree line, paused, and stared back at them over its shoulder. That stare held more purpose than anything Megan had ever seen from an animal. It looked like expectation, like a call. Her breath trembled. "Ryan, what if it's trying to show us where Leo is?" He closed his eyes, as though the words physically hurt. "Megan, please, don't do this to yourself." But she couldn't look away. The lion stood there, poised, waiting. The night around it seemed to tighten, as though holding its breath. When it finally moved again, its steps were slow and deliberate. It slipped into the darkness, its golden fur swallowed by the trees, until nothing remained but the faintest echo of its presence. Megan pressed her hand to the glass, tears blurring her vision. The house fell silent once more, but the echo of those 3 knocks stayed with her, steady, haunting, impossible to ignore. For the first time since Leo vanished, something inside her whispered that the forest wasn't done speaking, and neither was the lion. By the following evening, Megan and Ryan had convinced themselves that the previous night's encounter had been a product of exhaustion, grief, and frayed nerves. They told each other out loud that there had to be a rational explanation, a wandering big cat, a fluke, a moment of stress that twisted their perception, but neither of them truly believed it. They tiptoed through the day with the uneasy awareness that something had shifted, something they couldn't name, something that felt like the air before a storm. The house was quieter than usual. Even the dogs in the distance didn't bark as much as they normally did. Megan spent the day near the back window with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring into the woods. Ryan tried to pretend things were normal, cleaning tools in the garage, checking the map again, making calls to the sheriff. But every time his gaze drifted toward the tree line, he paused, as though expecting something to emerge. By dusk, a chill crept into the house. Megan reheated leftovers neither of them touched. The sun dropped behind the ridge, spilling a red wash through the pines. When the last bit of daylight faded, the familiar ache returned, the kind of dread that came from missing someone with every inch of your being. Megan's breath fogged in front of her as she stood at the glass door, her hand hovering over the lock without knowing why. She couldn't shake the feeling that the night was waiting for something. Then it happened. Tap. Her heart froze. Tap. Tap. 3 knocks. Clear. Sharp. Intentional. She clasped the curtain with trembling fingers and drew it open just enough to look outside. Ryan appeared beside her almost instantly, flashlight in hand though he hadn't turned it on yet. They both stared. The lion was back. It stood exactly where it had stood the night before, the porch light haloing its golden fur. It wasn't pacing or crouching. It wasn't behaving like a predator. It simply stood there, tall and steady, breathing softly against the glass. Those same amber eyes fixed on them, eyes that seemed too steady, too aware. Megan whispered, "Ryan, this is real. It's happening again." He didn't reply. His jaw tightened and his knuckles whitened around the flashlight. The lion sat down, calmly, gracefully, as though settling in for a conversation. Then it lowered its head, lifted one paw, and tapped the glass again. Tap, 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 the exact same rhythm. Megan felt her breath trembling through her chest. It wasn't random, not wildlife confusion, not an accident. It was communication. Before she could speak, headlights swung across the backyard again, another neighbor snapping photos from afar, then quickly driving off when she realized what she was seeing. But the lion didn't react at all. The noises, the movement, the human voices, it ignored everything except the Doyles. Ryan raised the flashlight, clicked it on, and aimed the beam near the lion's paws. He wasn't trying to scare it, just to see better. But the lion didn't flinch. Instead, it stood up slowly and stepped to the side of the porch. When it moved, something slid from beneath its jaw and dropped gently onto the wooden boards. Megan pressed both hands against her mouth. A small object lay in the flashlight beam, a scrap of fabric, faded blue with a tiny stitched design. Ryan whispered, "No. No, it can't be." It was Leo's other glove, the matching one from the pair he wore nearly every day in the cold, the one Megan had tucked in his coat pocket that morning, the one no one had found in the search. She opened the sliding door just an inch despite Ryan's startled, "Megan!" But she didn't step out. She reached down, grabbed the glove with shaking fingers, and pulled it back inside. It was warm. It smelled faintly of pine and something else, like the inside of a small shelter, somewhere not exposed to rain or dirt, somewhere a child might have rested. Ryan stood frozen, staring at the glove like it was a ghost. The lion backed away 2 steps, then looked toward the forest. It didn't growl or roar. It didn't bare its teeth. It simply turned, took 3 slow steps toward the tree line, and paused. It looked over its shoulder, tail flicking once, waiting. Megan whispered, "It's trying to lead us again." Ryan shook his head fiercely. "We can't follow it. We can't go into the woods at night. That thing is wild." Her voice cracked. "But it has Leo's glove, Ryan. It brought it back. How would it have it unless—" She cut off, unable to finish. The lion paced a few feet in the direction of the woods, then back again, as though growing impatient. Then it tapped its paw gently against the ground. Tap, tap, tap. The same rhythm, the same call. Megan's breath hitched. "It's asking us to come." Ryan's face went pale. He locked the sliding door, stepping between her and the glass. "Absolutely not. Whatever's happening here, it's dangerous. And we're not following a lion into the dark." The lion stared at them for several long seconds, its gaze steady and almost disappointed. Then, without warning, it lifted its head and let out a low, soft sound, something between a grunt and a humming vibration. Not aggressive, not warning, something almost like reassurance. Then it turned and walked back into the woods, swallowed by shadows once again. The glove slipped from Megan's hand onto the carpet as she dropped to her knees. The weight of the truth pressed down on her chest. Leo had been somewhere. Leo had been alive. And somehow, impossibly, the lion knew where. For the rest of the night, neither she nor Ryan moved far from the door. They left the lights on, scanning the yard every few minutes. The forest loomed silently behind their home, black and impenetrable. Even the wind seemed to stop touching the branches. But long after midnight, when Megan finally began to drift into a restless doze on the couch, she heard something faint, almost imagined. Far off in the woods, a single low sound echoed through the ridge. Not a growl, not a roar, a call, a reminder. The lion would return, and Megan knew with a certainty she couldn't explain that it would not come empty-handed. By the next morning, the glove lay on the kitchen table like a small, stubborn miracle. Megan kept circling it, touching it, smoothing the fabric flat. The same glove she had tucked into Leo's coat before he ran outside that day. She must have picked it up and set it down a dozen times, each time hoping it would give her some new answer. It didn't. It only made her heart ache more sharply. Ryan stared at it too, but with a different expression. Anger at himself, at the forest, at whatever had taken their son away, at whatever had brought the glove back. He tried to reason through the impossible. "Maybe a hiker found it," he muttered for the 5th time. "Maybe someone picked it up and dropped it. Maybe—" "Ryan," Megan whispered. "It was warm." He looked at her, eyes shadowed. "Megan, it was warm," she said again, her voice firmer this time. Something carried it, something alive. Her words hung in the air, too heavy to ignore. The sheriff came by mid-morning to update them, but they didn't show him the glove. Megan couldn't bring herself to explain it. She wasn't ready to hear disbelief, not when she barely understood it herself. Instead, they nodded numbly as he talked about shifting search grids and running cadaver dogs, words that made Megan's stomach twist. She thanked him politely, then closed the door as soon as he left and leaned her forehead against it, fighting back the rising panic. The glove sat on the table. The lion had brought it, and the forest had gone too quiet. By sunset, the silence around their house felt suffocating. Ryan tried to distract himself by pacing through the house, checking locks, sharpening flashlights, loading batteries, pretending he wasn't watching the clock. Megan sat by the sliding door with Leo's blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She couldn't shake the sense that something enormous was turning beneath the surface of their life. Some unseen current, they had been swept into without warning. When the final light drained from the sky, Megan's pulse quickened. The woods darkened into a single, solid wall of shadow. The porch light flickered once, as though reacting to her fear. Then, tap. Her heart stopped. Tap, tap. 3 perfect knocks. She threw the curtain aside before Ryan could reach her. The lion was back. This time, it didn't just stand there. It stepped forward into the light, its breath fogging in slow rhythms, its golden fur dusted with pine needles. It seemed larger somehow, more solid in the night. And in its mouth, held gently between its jaws, was something bright red. Megan pressed a hand to her chest as a sob tore loose. "Oh my God," Ryan exhaled sharply. "Is that—" The lion lowered its head and set the object onto the porch with a deliberate care that defied belief. The porch light illuminated the worn fibers, the little frayed edges, the crooked stitched letter in the corner. Leo's beanie, the one he always wore on cold mornings, the one he had on the day he disappeared. Megan swung the sliding door open without thinking. She didn't step outside, but she crouched and reached for the beanie with trembling hands. It was soft, clean, not dragged or torn or weathered. There was no blood, no dirt, no sign it had been on the forest floor. It felt like it had never left Leo's head. The lion didn't move. It didn't growl. It didn't take advantage of the open door. It simply watched her with those amber eyes. Calm, patient, purposeful. Ryan grabbed her shoulder. "Megan, get back, get inside." His voice shook, not with fear of the animal, but with fear of hope. Hope could be crueler than any predator. Megan clutched the beanie to her chest and stepped backward into the house. Ryan slid the door shut, though his eyes never left the lion. The creature sat back on its haunches, tail curling neatly beside its feet. It looked at them as if waiting for something. Recognition, understanding, action. Then it turned its head toward the tree line again. The same gesture as the night before. A silent invitation. A request. "Follow me." Megan whispered, "Ryan." It brought his hat, his glove. "It's bringing us pieces of our son." "That's what scares me," he said quietly, "because I don't know what any of this means." The lion stepped forward once, then back again, as if repeating its message. Megan pressed her face to the glass, tears blurring her view. The forest behind the animal seemed impossibly dark, swallowing everything beyond the first row of pines. The lion let out a low, resonant sound, something soft and urging, not threatening. Then it stepped off the porch and began to walk toward the trees. It paused, looked back, waited. Ryan swallowed hard. "It wants us to follow." Megan gripped the beanie. "Then maybe we should." But before either of them could make another choice, a pair of headlights rolled slowly into their driveway. A vehicle door opened, and the familiar voice of a woman carried across the cold night. "Megan? Ryan? You out here?" It was Alicia Brooks, the mountain patrol officer. The lion shifted its weight, glancing briefly toward the approaching light, but didn't run. It didn't posture. It simply held its ground, watching the Doyles. Alicia jogged toward the porch, her flashlight bouncing against her vest. She froze mid-step the moment her beam caught the lion fully. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered, eyes wide. "That thing's been coming to your house?" Megan nodded weakly and held up the beanie with shaking fingers. "It brought this. It brought Leo's things." Alicia stared at the lion, then at the tree line, then back again. Her face changed, fear mixing with something like reluctant belief. "This isn't normal behavior," she murmured. "Not by a long shot." The lion flicked its tail once and began backing toward the woods again. Alicia lowered her flashlight. "It wants you to go with it." Ryan turned sharply. You can't be serious. But Alicia didn't blink. I've tracked lions for over a decade. I've never seen one act like this. Not here. Not anywhere. She stepped closer to the glass door, her voice low. It's not trying to hurt you. Megan gripped Leo's hat. Then what is it doing? Alicia swallowed. Leading you. The lion reached the edge of the tree line, paused, and looked back once more. The forest behind it seemed to breathe, shifting with an unseen current. The air grew colder. The creature let out a single soft sound, one final call. Then it disappeared into the dark. This time, Megan didn't collapse. She didn't crumble or scream. She turned to Ryan with a clarity that frightened even herself. It's showing us where Leo is, she said. And tomorrow night, if it comes back, we follow it. Ryan's breath trembled. He didn't argue. Because deep down, beneath the fear and disbelief, the truth was settling in. The lion had not come to scare them. It had come to bring their son home. Those words echoed inside Megan long after the creature vanished into the trees. She barely slept that night, just a few scattered minutes of restless drifting before the fear jolted her awake again. Each time she opened her eyes, she reached immediately for the beanie lying on the nightstand, as if touching it might keep Leo close somehow. Ryan lay beside her staring at the ceiling, wide awake as well, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them both. By morning, neither of them knew what to think anymore. The house felt colder than usual, as if the night's strange encounter had seeped into the walls. The forest beyond the windows seemed to watch them, holding its secrets tight. Megan couldn't stop replaying the scene. The lion standing in the porch light, placing Leo's beanie gently at the door, as though delivering a message. When Alicia Brooks returned in her patrol SUV just after sunrise, the sight of her uniform brought Megan a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. Relief. Someone who understood the woods. Someone who could help make sense of what was happening. Alicia stepped out of her truck with a thermos in one hand and a look of deep concern in her eyes. You two look like you haven't slept, she said, closing the door softly behind her. We didn't, Ryan admitted. Couldn't. Alicia nodded as if she had expected that answer. She glanced toward the porch, toward the faint paw prints still visible on the boards. I didn't want to leave you alone last night without checking back in, she said. I kept thinking about that lion, about how it acted. I've never seen anything like it. She wasn't speaking like a ranger anymore. She was speaking like someone caught between training and something much larger, something she couldn't categorize on a form or checklist. Megan held out the beanie. It brought this, she whispered. It brought his glove. It keeps coming back. Alicia took the beanie gently, examining it. Her expression tightened. This wasn't lying out in the woods, she murmured. Not for days. Not in this weather. Someone kept it out of the elements. She hesitated before looking up, and a lion wouldn't pick this up on accident. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing. So what are you saying? That this lion is, what, intelligent, trained, that someone's using it? His voice broke with frustration. What is going on out there? Alicia didn't answer right away. She studied the forest, her eyes narrowing. I don't know, she said finally. But I do know animals communicate in ways we don't always understand. They recognize people, places, patterns. She glanced back at them. And this one, it's not behaving like an animal acting on instinct. Megan felt her breath catch. She could feel it, the truth she hadn't dared to speak. It's trying to help us. Alicia didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss her. She just gave a slow exhale, as though wrestling with something inside herself. Maybe, she murmured. Or maybe it needs your help just as badly. Those words settled into the kitchen like dust, soft but impossible to ignore. As the morning stretched into early afternoon, Alicia walked the property, scanning the ground, the tree line, the path leading toward the ridge. She took dozens of photos of the paw prints, the pattern of movement, the distance between tracks. She crouched near the porch and measured the spacing of the knocks on the doorframe, tracing the faint smudges with her fingertips. Each detail deepened the frown on her face. When she came back inside, Megan and Ryan were waiting at the table with Leo's beanie between them. Alicia sat down slowly. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said. "I don't think the usual search methods are going to find your son." Megan's eyes filled instantly. "What do you mean?" "Because whatever happened out there," Alicia gestured toward the woods, "it's not something we can track with standard procedure. This lion," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "it's targeting your home. It's bringing objects from your son. It's returning at the same time every night. That's not random. It's behavior with intention." Ryan clenched his jaw. "So what do we do?" Alicia leaned forward. "If that lion comes back, and it will, then tomorrow night, we follow it." Megan closed her eyes, a mix of fear and relief washing over her. Hearing someone else say it made it real, made it possible, made it terrifying. "What if it leads us into danger?" Ryan asked. Alicia held his gaze. "Then I'll protect you. But right now, the biggest danger is losing valuable time." Megan nodded slowly, feeling her heart shift between dread and hope. "We'll go," she whispered. "If it comes back, we follow." The ranger exhaled deeply, as if bracing herself. "Then we need to be ready." The rest of the day passed in a blur of quiet preparation. Alicia borrowed equipment from the station, extra lights, radios, and enough first aid supplies to handle whatever they might encounter. She walked the yard again, hands on her hips, scanning the edge of the tree line as though trying to read a message written in the branches. Megan spent the afternoon going through Leo's things, not because she needed to, but because she couldn't stop herself. She held his little drawings, his toy compass, his tiny soccer medals. Every item brought new tears. She felt Ryan's hand rest on her shoulder as he knelt beside her. "We're going to find him," he whispered. "I know it." For the first time in days, she believed him. As dusk crept toward the ridge, an uneasy quiet settled over the property. Birds hushed. The wind stilled. The air felt heavy, as though the forest itself was waiting. Megan stood at the sliding door again, watching the shadows stretch longer across the yard. Alicia moved beside her, silent but alert, the calm steadiness of a ranger grounding the rising tension. Ryan hovered behind them, flashlight in hand, shoulders tight with anticipation. The sun dipped lower. The yard darkened. The porch light flickered on. Then, tap. Megan gasped. Tap. Tap. 3 perfect knocks. She whipped the curtain aside. The lion stood there once more, golden fur catching the porch light, eyes fixed on them with unwavering intent. Something about it seemed even more urgent than the night before. Its posture straight, its breath visible in short bursts, its gaze almost pleading. Alicia stepped closer to the glass. "My God," she whispered. "It came just like before. Exact timing." The lion lifted its paw. Tap, tap, tap. A reminder, a command, a call to action. Then it turned toward the forest. Megan pressed her hand against the glass. "It's time," she whispered. Alicia nodded. "Get your boots on. We're going." Ryan swallowed hard. All right. Let's do this." The lion paused at the edge of the tree line and looked back once more, waiting, guiding. knowing. Megan gripped Leo's beanie tight, feeling the soft fabric against her palm. This wasn't fear anymore. It was purpose. It was direction. The lion had come for them. And tonight, for the first time, they would follow. Megan felt her pulse hammering as she stepped onto the porch, the cold boards creaking beneath her boots. The night air carried a sharp bite, crisp and silent, the kind of quiet that made every sound seem magnified. Ryan walked right behind her, jaw set tight, gripping a flashlight like it was the only thing he had control over. Alicia moved beside them in steady, practiced strides, her hand resting near the canister of bear spray clipped to her belt, not out of hostility, but out of caution. Even she, with all her experience, was stepping into the unknown. At the tree line, the lion waited. It stood half-turned toward them, its broad body framed by the shadows of the pines. The porch light cast a faint golden line along the spine of its back. As Megan took her first step forward, the lion's ears twitched. When she took the second, it turned fully and began walking deeper into the woods, slowly, deliberately, keeping about 30 feet ahead of them. The forest swallowed the house behind them far quicker than Megan expected. The moment they crossed beneath the first row of pines, the wind changed. The air grew heavier, denser. Every sound, branches shifting, leaves settling, the soft thud of the lion's paws seemed amplified by the dark. "Stay close," Alicia murmured quietly, "and step where I step if things get rough." Ryan let out a breath that fogged instantly in the cold. "I can't believe we're doing this." "No one can," Megan whispered, "but we don't have another way." Ahead of them, the lion moved with fluid confidence. It didn't look back often, but when it did, Megan felt a jolt of something deep and indescribable, like the creature was checking to make sure they were still coming, still trusting, still willing to see where it would lead. They continued walking until Alicia suddenly paused. "Hold up." Megan stopped instantly. "What is it?" Alicia crouched and shined her flashlight at the base of a towering ponderosa pine. There, carved deep into the bark, was a symbol, roughly shaped like a curved arch. It wasn't an accidental scratch or an animal mark. It was deliberate, intentional, too clean, too symmetrical. "I saw marks like this on a case years ago," Alicia said quietly. "Old ones. Nothing like this, though. This one looks fresh." Ryan frowned, shining the beam higher. "What does it mean?" Alicia didn't answer right away. She brushed her gloved fingers along the grooves. "It means someone, or something, has been here before." The lion waited a few yards ahead, its golden fur glowing faintly in the flashlight beams. When Alicia stood again, it resumed moving, weaving through trees with ease. The deeper they walked, the stranger the forest felt. The temperature dipped abruptly, colder than the ridge normally got this early in the season. A faint fog curled around the bases of trees, hugging the earth like a low, creeping tide. And in the distance, Megan could swear she heard the faint trickle of water. Yet they weren't anywhere near the creek. Every few minutes, another symbol appeared carved into bark, always in the same curved shape, always spaced evenly, as though marking a hidden path known only to those who understood the message. The lion followed that path perfectly. Megan tightened her grip on Leo's beanie as they continued onward. The fabric felt warm in her hand, not from the forest, but from the small spark of hope she kept trying to protect in her heart. They climbed over roots slick with moss, ducked under fallen branches, and wound through narrow passages where the trees grew tight like a natural gate. The lion never strayed too far, always ahead, always guiding. Ryan finally spoke, his voice hushed. "Why this path? Why not the main trails?" "Because whatever happened to Leo didn't happen near the main trails," Alicia said quietly. "Something took him deeper. Something took him off the maps." A sharp snap echoed behind them. All three froze, Megan's breath caught in her throat. Alicia swung her flashlight toward the sound, scanning the darkness. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a deer bounded quietly across the ridge, pausing long enough to stare at them before slipping away. Megan exhaled shakily. I know, Alicia said softly. It's okay. But even Alicia didn't sound fully convinced. The lion stopped again near a cluster of large boulders. It turned its head, looking directly at Megan. That same strange intensity flickered through its eyes, an emotion she would have sworn belonged to people, not wild animals. Then it stepped around the boulders and disappeared behind them. A knot formed in Megan's chest. She hurried forward faster than she meant to, her boots crunching over gravel and pine needles. Alicia and Ryan stayed right at her side. When they rounded the boulders, the forest opened into a narrow chute of rock, almost like a sloping hallway carved into the ridge. The lion stood at the base of it, tail swaying once, head lifted as though urging them onward. Alicia breathed out in disbelief. This isn't on any map I know. It's hidden, Megan whispered. It wasn't meant to be found. Ryan stepped beside her, unless someone, or something, wanted it found. The lion turned and walked down the rocky incline, disappearing briefly behind a bend before reappearing farther down, lit by a sliver of moonlight cutting through the trees above. They followed. The further down they went, the colder it became. The air grew damp, mixing with the scent of soil and old pine. Megan slipped once on loose gravel, and Ryan grabbed her elbow quickly, steadying her. The forest here felt ancient, untouched, like stepping into a place time had forgotten. At the bottom of the incline, the trees parted into a small clearing surrounded by stone walls. The lion led them to the center, paused, then tilted its head toward a shadowed corner near the base of a massive tree. A small object lay half buried in pine needles. Megan's heart lurched. She dropped to her knees before Alicia or Ryan could stop her. She brushed aside the needles with trembling hands. It was a toy compass, scratched, weathered, but unmistakably Leo's. Her breath broke on a sob. She clutched the compass to her chest, her entire body shaking. He was here. He was right here. Ryan knelt beside her, his forehead pressed against her shoulder. Alicia stood behind them, her voice barely above a whisper. This wasn't here earlier today. I searched parts of this ridge myself. Megan wiped her tears and looked at the lion. It stood perfectly still, watching her. Its gaze was steady, waiting, as though it had been trying to guide them to this exact spot all along. Alicia swallowed. This lion didn't just find his things. It tracked him. It followed him. It stayed close to him somehow. Ryan stood slowly, his voice shaking. Then where is he? Where did he go from here? The lion looked toward a narrow crack between the stone walls, a path they hadn't noticed before, a hidden route, swallowed by shadow. The creature took one step toward it, then another. It didn't tap this time. It didn't call out. It simply looked back at them, eyes deep and unwavering. This way. Alicia tightened her grip on her flashlight. We're going in, she said softly. All three of us. Megan nodded, clutching the compass, her fear folding into fierce determination. She wasn't just following hope anymore. She was following her son's trail. And the lion, the silent guide who seemed to know every piece of the path, wasn't done leading them, not even close. The narrow passageway the lion indicated was barely more than a slit between two massive rock faces. From a distance, it looked like a trick of shadow, a crease in the cliffside, something the eyes skimmed right past. But as Megan, Ryan, and Alicia approached it, a cold draft of air slid out from its depths, heavy, ancient, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen pine. Alicia shined her flashlight into the opening, and the beam cut through layers of darkness until the light dissolved into black. "We have to move slowly," she said quietly. "The ground could drop without warning." The lion slipped through the gap without effort, its fur brushing the stone as it moved. It paused just long enough to look back at them before vanishing deeper inside. Megan felt her heart thump against her ribs. She tightened her hold on the compass Leo had once carried, holding it like a talisman. "Stay behind me," Alicia instructed as she stepped into the passage. Ryan placed a hand protectively at the small of Megan's back, guiding her through. Their shoulders brushed the stone walls. At times, they had to turn sideways just to keep moving. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Each breath billowed in faint white clouds. They had been walking for nearly 10 minutes when the passage suddenly widened. It opened into a small ravine, a hollow carved between cliffs, hidden so deeply within the ridge that Megan doubted any outsider had ever stumbled upon it. Moonlight filtered down in thin strands through cracks high above, illuminating the overgrown ferns and moss-covered boulders below. Then she saw it. Against the far rock wall, nestled beneath an overhang, stood a small cabin. No, calling it a cabin felt too generous. It was a structure pieced together from aging timber and mismatched boards, its roof sagging under a blanket of old moss. One shutter hung crooked. A rusty lantern lay tipped in the dirt near the front step. The whole place looked abandoned, forgotten, swallowed by time. Yet a thin wisp of smoke curled upward from a pipe in the roof. Megan's breath caught in her throat. "Someone's here." Alicia stiffened. She raised her arm, motioning for them to stay close. The lion sat 10 feet from the door, its posture calm but alert, as though it had brought them exactly where they needed to be. And now it waited for them to understand why. Alicia slowly approached the cabin, her flashlight sweeping over the walls, the windows, the ground. "This place isn't on any map," she said under her breath, "and I've patrolled this ridge for years." "Leo was here." Megan's voice trembled as she stepped forward, her fingertips brushing the sleeve of Ryan's jacket for courage. "I can feel it." Her fear wasn't gone, but it had shifted. It no longer held the sharp edge of despair. Now it pulsed with direction, with unbearable urgency. A noise echoed softly from inside, something like a pot being set down or the shuffle of feet on wooden planks. Alicia raised her hand. "Stay behind me." She stepped up to the crooked door, paused, and knocked gently. No response. She tried again. "Hello? This is Officer Brooks with Mountain Patrol. We're looking for a missing child. Is anyone inside?" Silence. Another soft shuffle came from within. Alicia reached for the doorknob. It turned easily, too easily, and the door creaked open with a long, aching groan. The smell hit them first. Smoke, pine, old dust, and something else, something faintly medicinal, like antiseptic wiped across a cut. Alicia stepped inside, sweeping her flashlight across the room. Megan's breath hitched. On a small wooden table near a wall of shelves lay a tiny blue jacket, Leo's jacket, the same one she had zipped for him that morning. Dirt smudged the sleeves. A thread hung from the collar. Megan rushed forward and grabbed it, clutching it to her chest. "Oh God! Oh my God!" Her knees buckled slightly, and Ryan caught her, holding her steady. His eyes glistened, but he said nothing. He couldn't. Alicia examined the space more closely, while Megan sobbed quietly against Ryan's chest. The cabin interior was cluttered but lived in. A stone stove held the faint glow of a dying ember. An old tin pot sat beside it, still damp as though someone had washed it recently. A cot in the corner had a blanket draped neatly over it. Shelves held jars stuffed with dried herbs and small tools. The air carried warmth that didn't belong in an abandoned shelter. Someone had been here moments before. Someone who had cared enough to treat a child. Alicia moved toward a corner shelf where several pieces of scrap paper hung pinned to the wall. She lifted one, frowning. "These are maps," she murmured. "Hand-drawn, detailed. They're marking paths and waterways, and something else." She traced a finger over the curved symbols marked across several spots, symbols identical to those carved on the trees outside. Ryan stepped beside her. "What are those?" Alicia shook her head slowly. "I honestly don't know, but whoever drew these knew this ridge better than anyone." Before they could examine further, a faint rustling came from behind the cabin. The lion lifted its head, ears pointed sharply, eyes fixed toward the back door. Alicia raised her flashlight again. "Someone's coming." The back door creaked. Megan clutched Leo's jacket harder. A figure stepped into the doorway. A man, tall, rugged, wearing a weathered coat and carrying a battered backpack. His face was shadowed at first, but when he stepped forward, the lantern light caught the angles of his jaw and the deep lines around his eyes. He froze when he saw them. Alicia steadied herself. "Sir, don't move. We're not here to harm you." The man slowly raised his hands, palms out. His voice, when he spoke, was rough but calm. "I know why you're here." Megan's breath trembled. "Where's my son?" The man's eyes softened in a way that didn't fit his rugged exterior. "Safe," he said. "He's safe. I didn't take him. I found him." Ryan stepped forward, fists clenched. "Where is he now?" The man looked at the lion, then back at Megan. "He's close, and he's okay. Scared, hurt a little, but okay." Tears spilled onto Megan's cheeks. "Who are you?" Alicia demanded, her voice sharp with authority. He exhaled. "Name's Grant Mercer. I've lived out here a long time. Long enough to know these woods don't show their paths unless they want to." Megan's stomach twisted with confusion. "What do you mean?" Grant's gaze drifted to the lion, which stood poised and watchful beside the cabin. "That animal saved your boy, stayed with him, kept the cold off him, kept the predators away." The world tilted under Megan's feet. "The lion saved him?" Grant nodded slowly. "Watched over him like it had a mission, like it recognized him." Alicia blinked hard, trying to process everything. "How long ago?" "2 nights, Grant said. "He was hurt. I patched him up, but the lion did most of the work." Megan clutched the jacket tighter. "Where is he now? I need to see him, please." "You will," Grant said softly. "But there's something else you need to understand before we go any farther." The lion stepped closer to Grant then, like a guardian standing beside a trusted old friend. Grant met Megan's eyes again. "The forest didn't let Leo get lost," he said quietly. "It led him somewhere. And this lion, it's been trying to lead you there too." Megan's heart pounded so loudly she could hear it echo through the cabin walls. Grant motioned toward a shadowed path winding behind the cliff, deeper into the ravine. "Your son is waiting," he said. "Let me take you to him." And before Megan could catch her breath, the lion turned toward that hidden path, its golden tail flicking once, as if urging them forward into the next chapter of the truth, a truth she could feel was about to change everything. Grant moved ahead of them, his steps steady and familiar with the terrain, as though he'd walked this trail so many times it had been carved into his bones. Alicia followed close behind him, flashlight sweeping across the narrow trail carved between the cliff walls. Ryan stayed beside Megan, one arm hovering protectively near her back, ready to catch her if her legs gave out. The forest around them felt dense, thick with a quiet that didn't feel empty. It felt watchful. The lion trotted ahead, silent and sure-footed. Every few yards, it would pause, glance back, and wait just long enough to ensure they were still following. In the faint moonlight, Its golden coat seemed almost to glow. "Grant," Alicia whispered as they walked, "you said you found Leo 2 nights ago. How? Where?" Grant didn't break stride. He'd fallen into a shallow ravine not far from here. Sprained his ankle. Scared, cold, trying to crawl his way out. He paused, jaw tightening with the memory. And this lion was already with him. Megan swallowed hard. Was he hurt badly? Sprain, cold, hungry, Grant said. But alive, because this creature refused to leave him. Megan squeezed Leo's jacket in her hands until her knuckles went white. The thought of her boy lying alone in the dark woods, hurt and terrified, made her stomach twist violently. But knowing he wasn't alone, knowing something had watched over him, helped her breathe again. The trail grew steeper, forcing them to climb over scattered rocks and tangled roots. Moss glowed faintly beneath the flashlight beams, and tiny droplets glistened on ferns like scattered glass. Somewhere in the distance, a soft rumble echoed through the canyon. Low, haunting. Not quite a roar. "What was that?" Ryan murmured. Grant didn't stop. "The forest never sleeps," he said simply. But Megan noticed the lion's ears twitch. Alert, aware, but unafraid. And somehow, that kept her moving. They reached a break in the rock wall where the path widened into a shelf overlooking a small ravine below. Grant raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "Watch your step," he said. "The ground gives way here if you're not careful." Alicia knelt, sweeping her flashlight along the lower ridge, tracing something Megan couldn't see from her angle. Then Alicia's breath caught. "Hold on. Grant, are those—" Grant nodded grimly. "Tracks." Megan leaned forward, heart pounding. Faint in the dirt below were small footprints, child-sized, leading toward the deeper shadows of the ravine. Her breath hitched. "Leo." Alicia's voice softened. "This is recent. Not more than a day old." Megan covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't sob this time. She felt strength rising inside her, a fierce, unstoppable urgency. Her boy had walked here. Her boy had survived here, and she would find him. Grant started downward along a different path, one that wound around the ravine's edge. "He followed the lion," Grant said quietly. "It guided him just like it's guiding you now." Ryan frowned. "But why us? Why Leo?" Grant hesitated as though weighing what he should reveal. "Some animals have instincts sharper than we understand. They recognize fear, pain, innocence." He nodded toward the lion. "And some remember who's helped them." The lion reached the bottom of the ravine, then brushed against a fallen log before stopping abruptly. Its body shifted, alert, protective, not aggressive, but ready. Grant approached slowly and pointed to the ground. A blanket lay draped over a makeshift bed of pine needles. A small metal cup sat beside it, still holding a trace of water. And on one of the stones nearby was a faint smear of mud in the shape of a small handprint. Megan knelt and touched it, a soft sob shaking through her. "He slept here," she whispered. Ryan crouched beside her. "This is where he stayed." Alicia scanned the area, her brows tightening. Someone took care of him. Someone cleaned this space. Grant nodded. "Me." He nudged the blanket with his boot. "I found him here. Barely awake. He told me he was following a big cat with yellow eyes who wouldn't leave him alone." Megan felt her breath falter. The lion. Her boy had trusted it. He had followed it. "He wasn't scared," Grant continued softly. "That's what struck me. He said the lion felt familiar." A silence fell over the group. Thick, profound. Suddenly the lion shifted again, turning its head toward a shadowed crack between two tall boulders. It made a soft sound in its throat, urgent, coaxing. Grant stood straight. "We're close," he said. "He's not here now, but he didn't get far without help." Alicia stepped forward. "Leo's alive. We follow." Grant led them into the narrow opening. The air grew warmer, thick with the scent of soil and pine. The corridor bent sharply, swallowing the moonlight, until only their flashlights lit the way. The lion walked ahead, its silhouette steady against the glowing beams. As they moved deeper, Megan noticed markings on the stone walls, identical curved symbols carved deep into the rock. But here they were older, weathered, countless, as though generations had passed through this hidden path. "What do these symbols mean?" Ryan asked under his breath. Grant's voice was low. "They mark places the forest protects." Alicia shot him a look. "You make it sound alive." Grant didn't answer. The corridor suddenly widened again, revealing a small plateau surrounded by jagged stone. In the center stood a weathered post with a lantern hanging crookedly from it, lit, flickering weakly, as if someone had left it only moments ago. The lion approached the lantern, sniffed the air, then stepped aside. Grant turned to Megan. "Your son is close," he said, "just beyond that ridge." Megan clutched the compass and nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Alicia raised her flashlight toward a narrow chute leading down from the plateau. "Grant, did Leo tell you where he was heading?" Grant exhaled. "He said he heard something calling him, something that sounded like a deep purring in the trees." The lion let out a soft sound, almost like an acknowledgement. Megan looked at the animal, her eyes full of gratitude and fear all tangled together. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew where he was." The lion didn't blink. It simply took a step toward the chute, slow, purposeful. "Let's go," Alicia said. "We finish this." They descended the chute, stepping carefully over loose rocks and uneven ground. The darkness felt thicker here, like something ancient and patient had been waiting in it. Then a sharp sound echoed from below, a small yelp, startled but unmistakably human. Megan's heart stopped. Leo. She didn't wait. She didn't think. She ran. "Megan!" Ryan's voice echoed behind her, but nothing could slow her sprint toward the sound of her son. She rounded a bend in the rock, and then she saw him. A tiny figure curled at the base of a tree, his little hands pressed against the ground, his eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "Mom?" Megan fell to her knees. Leo was alive. Leo was here. Her entire world narrowed to the sound of his breath. But before she could reach him, before she could gather him in her arms, he pointed past her shoulder with trembling fingers. "Mom," he whispered, voice shaking. "It was coming back. It was coming back to protect me." Megan turned. And behind her, in the shadows of the chute, another shape moved. Heavy, powerful, larger than the lion that had guided them. The air grew still. A low rumble vibrated through the stones, and Megan realized with chilling certainty that their journey into the truth was only beginning. She froze, arms half extended toward Leo, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Ryan skidded to a stop beside her, breath ragged, flashlight beam trembling in his hand. Alicia raised her light toward the narrow chute behind them, her stance tightening like a drawn bow. Grant stood a few paces back, eyes narrowed, not in terror, but recognition. Another shadow swelled in the darkness, not the lion that had guided them. Something larger, broader, older. The rumble came again, deep, resonant, a sound that didn't threaten but announced its presence with the weight of something ancient. Leonard Doyle, barely 8 and shivering at the base of the tree, whispered, "That's the other one, the big one. It watched over me too." Megan felt every hair on her arms stand on end. Then the creature stepped forward. A massive lion, a full-grown male with a mane touched in silver, emerged from the shadows. Its shoulders were broad as boulders, its chest immense, yet it moved with an eerie, regal calm. Moonlight slipped through a crack overhead and lit the lines of its face, revealing amber eyes strikingly similar to the younger lion's, but deeper, wiser, almost knowing. The huge animal stopped several feet away. It didn't roar. It didn't lunge. It simply stood guard, gaze sweeping the clearing as though evaluating every person present and judging their intent. Ryan whispered, barely audible, "Oh my God." Alicia didn't move. She held her breath, hand hovering near the bear spray, but not daring to reach for it. Grant stepped forward with surprising sureness. "This is the one I told you about," he said softly. "The dominant, the protector of this ridge." Megan's chest tightened. "It protected Leo?" Grant nodded once. Both of them did. The younger one watched over him first. This one came later. Leo wiped his nose with the back of his hand, voice trembling but steady. "It didn't hurt me, Mom. It just stood there. Every time I got scared, it stood between me and the dark." The big lion's eyes flickered toward Leo at the sound of his voice. Not sharply, not hungrily, but gently, like a guardian acknowledging a child it had kept safe. Alicia finally spoke. This is impossible." Yet her voice held awe more than denial. Grant exhaled slowly. "It's not impossible. It's instinct. It's memory. And maybe something else." The younger lion padded forward, positioning itself near the larger one, two sentinels standing watch. Then, as if satisfied that Leo was safe in his mother's reach, the older lion lowered its head, a gesture of peace, of offering, of release. It was all the permission Megan needed. She surged forward and scooped Leo into her arms, pulling him against her chest with a sob that broke from somewhere deep inside her. He clung to her, burying his face into her neck, his small body trembling. Mom, I tried to come home," he whispered. "But I fell, and I hurt my foot, and I couldn't walk fast. But the big one came, and the other one stayed with me. They kept the noises away. They kept me warm." Megan's tears soaked into his hair. "You're safe now. You're safe." Ryan wrapped his arms around both of them, pressing his forehead to Leo's head. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. "We found you, buddy. We found you." Alicia wiped her cheek quickly when she thought no one was looking. But the moment of relief didn't last. A howl echoed through the ravine, a long, hungry cry that sliced through the air like a blade. Leo flinched in Megan's arms. Alicia's head snapped around. "Wolves! Too close!" Grant nodded grimly. "That's why these two stayed near him. The pack's been roaming deep this season." The older lion released a low growl, not at the humans but toward the direction of the howl, a sound layered with warning and authority. The younger lion took a stance beside it, tail twitching slowly, muscles gathering beneath its fur. Megan held Leo tighter. "We have to go, now." Alicia nodded. "Grant, lead us out. Fast." But Grant didn't move. His eyes remained on the two lions, his voice steady but laced with reverence. "They'll walk with us. They've been waiting for you to come." The older lion took a few steps forward, not threatening, but guiding, and turned toward the path they had descended earlier. The younger lion followed. Alicia blinked. "They're escorting us." Grant nodded. "Yes." Together they began the trek out of the ravine, but now, instead of walking behind the lions, Megan kept her son close to her heart. Steps trembling with every backward glance at the two enormous creatures shadowing them. The wolves howled again, closer this time. Every time the sound rippled through the rocks, both lions responded, not with fear, but with command. Their presence pushed the wild threats back into the dark, keeping the humans safe between them. Megan whispered into Leo's hair, "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe." Leo lifted his head slightly. "I knew you'd come. The big lion told me." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" Leo hesitated. "When it stood next to me, it made this sound, a soft one, like it was saying not to be scared." Alicia heard him and swallowed hard. "That wasn't a coincidence," she murmured. Grant responded quietly. "Some animals don't protect because they're tamed. They protect because they choose to." As they climbed the narrow chute, the older lion walked ahead, clearing the way. The younger one stayed behind them, eyes glowing in the faint light, ensuring nothing followed too close. The forest, vast, indifferent, wild, parted for them as though held at bay by the silent authority of their unusual guardians. When they reached the plateau again, the wind picked up, sweeping cold air across their faces. Megan lifted Leo higher in her arms, shielding him. Ryan steadied her at each step. Alicia kept the flashlight steady, scanning the tree line. The lions stopped at the top of the incline. The older one lowered its head once more, its deep eyes meeting Megan's. It wasn't looking at her with the wildness she'd imagined predators carried. It was something else. Recognition. Closure. Farewell. Before Megan could comprehend the depth of the moment, the lion turned and disappeared between the trees, silent as a ghost. The younger lion hesitated a heartbeat longer, staring at Leo with a stillness that made her throat ache. Then it too melted into the forest shadows. Gone. Leaving only the whisper of wind and the soft thud of Megan's heartbeat echoing through the clearing. Ryan exhaled shakily. "They saved him," he said. "They saved our boy." Alicia looked at the forest, eyes wide, voice barely audible. "This will change everything I thought I knew about these woods." Grant stepped forward, resting a hand on the rock wall. "This ridge has always held secrets. Tonight, you saw one of the oldest." Megan hugged Leo close. The boy tucked his face into her chest, breathing softly. But as she held him, relief flooding through her in wave after wave, a single thought pierced her mind like a shaft of cold light. If the lions had saved Leo from the wolves, what other dangers had followed them this far into the forest? And how much deeper did this truth go? She felt it in her bones. They were not out of the woods yet, not in body, and not in truth. The words echoed through Megan as she held tightly onto Leo, feeling the small rise and fall of his breath against her shoulder. Relief washed through her in warm waves, yet underneath it ran a cold current, an awareness that something deeper had unfolded in these woods, something that went far beyond a simple rescue. Ryan steadied her as they began the climb out of the ravine, Alicia walking ahead to clear the path with her flashlight. Grant stayed behind them, eyes scanning the shadows as though the forest carried more stories he wasn't yet ready to tell. Leo clung to Megan's coat, his small fingers gripping the fabric with a desperate familiarity. But the lion's absence left a strange hollowness in the air, a quiet so profound it pressed at their ears. As they reached the ridge crest, Leo lifted his head from Megan's chest. His voice was soft, a worn whisper. "Mom, I thought I was dreaming when I heard you calling me." Her breath wavered. "Sweetheart, we never stopped looking." "I know," he said. "The young lion. He kept looking toward home, like he wanted me to keep believing you were coming." That sentence nearly dropped her to her knees. She pulled him closer and pressed a kiss to the top of his head, fighting back tears. Ryan touched Leo's cheek gently. Buddy, how long were you alone before the lions found you? Leo hesitated. I wasn't alone. Not really. I heard things in the woods, branches breaking, something following me. That's when the big lion showed up. Alicia slowed her pace, listening with rapt attention. Leo continued, voice trembling. It didn't touch me, it just stood between me and the dark. And when I cried, it made a sound, kind of like a humming. It helped me fall asleep. Megan felt her heart clench so tightly it hurt. Grant spoke quietly from behind them. These lions don't behave like the ones most people know. Their bond to this ridge runs deep, maybe deeper than any of us understand. Alicia gave him a skeptical glance, but even she didn't argue. Not after what they'd seen. As they walked, the forest seemed to shift around them, the canopy swaying with a distant breeze. Branches rattled above, sending scattered beams of moonlight across the ground. Each step carried the weight of everything that could have gone wrong, and the miracle that had gone right. When they reached a narrow bend between two boulders, Leo tugged Megan's sleeve. Mom, can we stop? She knelt immediately. What is it, sweetheart? Leo pointed to the ground. This is where I fell. Right there. A small divot in the earth marked the spot where a body might have hit the ground. A snapped branch leaned crookedly nearby. Megan felt her stomach twist. Ryan crouched beside them. How did you climb out? I didn't, Leo whispered. The younger lion helped me. He pushed his head under me, just enough so I could grab this rock. He touched a large stone embedded in the earth, its edges smooth from decades of weathering. Alicia looked at Grant. You said you found him in a different ravine. I did, Grant replied. But he must have tried to climb out first. These woods, they pull you in strange ways. Leo nodded. I tried to follow the humming. The humming made me feel safe. Megan exchanged a look with Ryan. The lion? Leo nodded again. Both of them did it. Alicia's breath caught. Two lions vocalizing to calm a child? That's unheard of, Grant finished quietly. I know. They continued forward, the path widening as the trees thinned. Moonlight brightened, stretching across the forest floor like silver ribbons leading them home. But just as that first sense of relief returned, Leo tensed in Megan's arms. What is it? She whispered. He pointed behind them. At first, she saw nothing. Then a shadow moved at the far end of the ravine, low and fluid. A wolf. Then another. Their eyes glinted pale gold in the dark, their silhouettes slipping between rocks with silent precision. They weren't charging, not yet, but they were tracking, watching the humans ascend with something like hunger in their gaze. Alicia stiffened. They're trailing us. Grant's voice was steady, not panicked. They've been doing that since dusk. These aren't strays, Alicia murmured. This is a pack. The wolves edged closer. Megan held Leo tighter. Ryan moved closer to shield them both. Then, from deeper in the woods, the air split with a sudden, powerful rumble. The same low, commanding sound the older lion had made earlier, but louder, angrier, a warning that shook loose stones from the cliffs. The wolves froze. Another rumble followed, closer. Then the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. The older lion stepped into view on a ridge above them, his towering shape bathed in moonlight. His mane rippled like a storm cloud, and his amber eyes found the wolves with a gaze so fierce, so absolute. The pack dropped back instantly, tails low, their dominance evaporating into instinctive retreat. Alicia let out a slow, shaky breath. That lion, it's not just guarding Leo, it's guarding all of us. The big lion held its stance until the last wolf disappeared into the darker forest. Only then did it turn its head slightly, as though confirming the humans were still moving. Grant whispered, "He's clearing the path." They resumed their climb. Leo lifted his head, watching the lion with wide, shining eyes. "He didn't want them to get me. Not any night." Megan kissed the top of his forehead. "He's watching over us now, too." The rise leveled out into a clearing scattered with pine needles. The sight of distant lanterns flickering through the trees signaled they were nearing home. Voices faintly carried in the wind. Search teams calling, deputies sweeping the ridge. But before they stepped beyond the tree line, the lion stopped. It stood at the edge of the shadows, half hidden by branches, its silhouette massive and unmoving. The younger lion appeared beside it moments later, smaller but no less powerful, mirroring the stance with deliberate pride. The two lions watched them silently. Megan stared back, holding Leo close, tears streaming. "Thank you," she whispered, too soft for the others to hear. The older lion dipped its head, just once. Then it turned and disappeared into the dark. The younger lion followed, glancing back a final time at Leo before melting into the trees like a ghost of the ridge. Grant's voice was low. "They won't come any closer. They know the forest ends here." Alicia lowered her flashlight, her expression softening. "We're safe." But as Megan stepped toward the lights of home, search teams rushing toward them, voices rising with relief, she couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear, from the overwhelming, impossible truth. Her child was alive because two creatures meant to inspire fear had chosen instead to protect, and the world she thought she knew would never look the same again. The clearing erupted with voices the moment Megan stepped out of the trees. Leo clutched tight in her arms. Searchlights swept across the ridge, deputies shouting to one another, neighbors calling Megan and Ryan's names with frantic relief. Footsteps pounded toward them from every direction. Megan heard it all, but it felt distant, muted, like she was standing in two worlds at once. One world held the familiar faces of Horseshoe Ridge, the sheriff, breathless and shocked, the neighbors who had prayed with them, the volunteers who hadn't slept in days. The other world, the one she had just walked out of, held two lions who vanished into the dark like guardians bound by a vow no human could understand. Leo tightened his arms around her neck. "Mom, are we home?" "Almost," she whispered. "We're almost home, sweetheart." Ryan stepped closer, pressing a hand to Leo's back as if to reassure himself their son was truly there, truly real. Tears hung unspoken in his eyes. "We got you, buddy. We're right here." Alicia moved ahead, raising a hand, shielding the family from the sudden crowd. "Give them space," she ordered, her voice steady but emotional. "Let's get them checked out first." As the sheriff approached, breath heaving, relief written in every line of his face, Megan felt an icy fear crawl up her spine. Not because of him, but because of what she knew she couldn't say. "Where did you find him?" the sheriff asked urgently. "Is he hurt? Did someone take him?" Grant stepped forward before Megan even opened her mouth. "He fell in the ravine," he said calmly. "Sprained his ankle. I found him just before dark." His voice was steady, practiced, carrying a tone that left little room for doubt. "I gave him food, wrapped his ankle, kept a fire going. He was scared, but he wasn't alone." The sheriff exhaled hard, relief sweeping over him. "Grant, you found him? Thank God." He gripped Grant's shoulder with sincerity. "You saved this boy's life." Grant simply nodded. Megan felt her stomach twist with the weight of the lie. Necessary, but heavy all the same. The truth would not protect the lions. It would doom them. The moment the public heard of a tame lion wandering near homes, trackers would swarm the ridge. Researchers, officials, hunters, the creatures who had rescued her son would be caged or killed. Alicia stepped closer to Megan, lowering her voice. "Say as little as possible. Let Grant carry this." Her eyes glistened, Not with fear, but with a choice she'd just made. She was a ranger, a protector of wildlife, a woman who followed rules. But tonight, she chose life over law. The sheriff bent down to Leo. "Hey, champ, you doing okay? You scared a whole county." Leo nodded sleepily. "I tried to come home, but the woods got really big." "And you're safe now," Megan whispered. Paramedics approached to check Leo over. He winced when they examined his ankle, but the moment they tried to lift him onto the stretcher, he panicked and clung to Megan. "No! Don't take me away from Mom!" Megan held him tight. "It's okay. I'll stay right beside you." She walked with the stretcher, her hand never leaving Leo's. Ryan remained on her other side, a firm wall of strength. But Leo wasn't done talking. He looked past the paramedics, toward the dark tree line, and whispered, "Are they coming?" Megan knelt beside him. "Who, sweetheart?" "The lions." Her heart stuttered. She glanced at Alicia, whose expression tightened slightly. Fear not of the animals, but of the questions that would come. Megan placed a gentle finger to her son's lips. "We don't talk about them now. We talk later at home, okay?" Leo blinked, then nodded. "Okay." One of the deputies overheard. "Lions? Did he just say—" Grant cut in quickly. He was scared. Probably heard coyotes and thought they were lions. Kids get confused in the dark out there. The deputy nodded, satisfied enough. The sheriff moved them toward the ambulance, urging them forward. But Alicia remained behind. She turned toward the forest, the same path they had emerged from, the shadows shifting gently in the breeze. She knew what she had to do, and she did it without hesitation. When the sheriff wasn't looking, she smashed the tracking device on her shoulder strap with the heel of her boot, a crunch echoing through the clearing. She kicked the fragments under a bush and stood tall again, as if nothing had happened. No recordings, no coordinates, no trace. A silent promise, her own sacrifice, to protect the truth. Megan saw the gesture. Their eyes met. No words needed. The forest would keep its secret because Alicia chose to. The ambulance doors shut softly. Leo lying on the stretcher, already half asleep with exhaustion. Megan's fingers threaded through his hair, tracing small circles. Ryan sat beside her, his hand holding hers tightly, grounding her, pulling her back to the present. But her mind drifted, back to the ravine, to the lantern-lit plateau, to the roar that had echoed through stone and bone. Back to the two lions, watching them leave with eyes that didn't belong to beasts, but to something older, wiser. "Ryan," she whispered softly, only for him. "We can never say what really happened." He nodded. "I know." "And not just for us," she continued. "For them." He squeezed her hand, unspoken agreement anchoring them both. As the ambulance rolled forward, Megan looked one last time at the tree line. The forest stood still, silent, ancient, knowing. She leaned back, eyes stinging with gratitude and fear. Tonight had changed everything. Their son lived because two creatures of the wild had chosen mercy over instinct, because people like Grant and Alicia understood the weight of silence, because some truths weren't meant for the world, only for the few who walked through them. Leo stirred, whispering as he drifted into sleep. "Mom, they said goodbye." Her breath trembled. Yes, the lions had said goodbye, and now it was their turn to protect them, just as fiercely as they had protected her son. Megan closed her eyes and let Leo rest against her, the sound of his quiet breathing folding her heart into something whole again. But even as the ambulance disappeared down the road, she knew the night wasn't finished with her. Not yet. Not this story. not this bond. Some things, once awakened, never truly fade. 3 quiet weeks passed after Leo's rescue, weeks Megan clung to with both hands, savoring every small, ordinary moment. The doctors cleared Leo with nothing more than a brace, some rest, and time. Neighbors brought casseroles, blankets, prayers written on folded slips of paper. Folks at Horseshoe Ridge waved from porches when she drove by, kindness shining through every gesture. But the nights were different. Every evening, when the sun sank into that deep red hush beyond the ridge, Leo would wander to the back window and stare at the forest line, as though expecting something or someone to step forward. Megan didn't stop him. She understood the feeling all too well. She felt it like a tug in her own chest. The bond hadn't fading. It had settled into them like a quiet heartbeat. Late one Sunday afternoon, Megan stood at the kitchen sink rinsing vegetables when she noticed Leo outside, motionless. He stood right at the edge of the patio, hands resting lightly on the railing, gaze locked on the trees. A strange stillness poured over the yard, the kind of stillness that made the air feel thicker, charged. She dried her hands quickly and stepped toward the door. "Leo? Honey? What is it?" He didn't turn. He lifted one hand, pointing. "Mama, look." Megan followed his line of sight, and her breath caught. A young lion stood at the tree line, smaller than the one who had guided them. Not a cub, not fully grown, somewhere in that in-between stage, its frame lanky, its mane just beginning to tuft. The fading sun cast its coat in a halo of amber light. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't hiding. It was simply watching. Its eyes held the same softness, the same steady, peaceful intelligence that had lived in the eyes of the young lion who saved Leo. But this one was different, younger, curious, almost shy. Megan pushed open the back door slowly, heart thrumming. Leo didn't move. He didn't run toward it. He didn't shrink back. He simply whispered, "I think it knows me." The young lion blinked slowly, tail sweeping the ground in a gentle arc. It wasn't a warning gesture. No tension rippled across its muscles. No hunger in its posture. Instead, its expression carried something almost human. Recognition. A greeting. Megan stepped beside Leo, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "Sweetheart, we don't go toward it. We stay right here." "I know," he said softly. "I just wanted to see it." From the doorway, Ryan emerged quietly, stopping when he saw the animal. "Another one," he murmured. "Or the next one." Alicia's warning echoed in Megan's mind. Some bonds don't end. Some guardians return. The young lion took a slow step forward, paws pressing into the grass, like it remembered the feel of human space but didn't want to intrude. It watched them, watched Leo, with an expression Megan could only call gentle curiosity. The breeze lifted the boy's hair. He breathed out shakily. "Mom, do you think the big lion sent him?" Megan swallowed. "Maybe. Or maybe he just came on his own." The lion turned its head toward the forest, flicking an ear as if listening to something too faint for them to hear. Then, with slow purpose, it looked back at Leo one last time. A farewell. A promise? A continuation? Megan couldn't tell. She only knew it felt sacred. Then the young lion stepped backward into the trees, disappearing the same way the others had. Silent, graceful, as if swallowed by the forest that had once nearly taken their son. Leo let out a long breath. "He came to say goodbye," he whispered. "Or hello," Ryan said quietly behind them. Megan knelt and gathered Leo against her chest, the boy's arms wrapping around her neck. His heart beat softly beneath her palm, steady, alive. miraculous. The forest rustled, settling back into its ancient quiet. Megan held her son a little longer, eyes fixed on the tree line. "Whatever happens," she whispered, more to herself than to him, "we protect them, the way they protected you." Leo nodded into her shoulder. The evening sun dipped fully behind the ridge, leaving only a soft orange glow in the sky. The young lion was gone, but the feeling it left behind lingered like a warm echo, a reminder, a blessing. A silent bond renewed. Megan reached into her pocket and closed her fingers around the smooth pendant Grant had given her the night they escaped the ravine. It was warm again, faintly pulsing, like a heartbeat. She looked toward the forest, a soft smile forming on her lips. "The ridge remembers," she whispered. "And so do we." As they stepped back toward the house, Leo holding her hand, Ryan wrapping an arm around them both, their yard felt different. Not haunted, not fearful. Watched over, safe. Somewhere deep in the woods, a distant call rose and faded, a soft, low resonance that felt more like a greeting than a warning. The forest had not forgotten the child it saved, nor the family it spared. And as the last light of dusk washed over Horseshoe Ridge, Megan understood the truth that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Some bonds don't end. They simply change shape. And sometimes, they walk on four legs. If this story touched you, even just a little, leave a simple 1 in the comments. Just a single number, so we know you're still here, still listening, still feeling these journeys with us. And if you want to walk with us through the next story waiting in the trees, make sure you subscribe. There's so much more ahead. More courage, more mystery, more moments that remind us the world is still full of quiet miracles. We'll see you in the next chapter.